Today on Hebrew Vocab Boost, we're talking about the Shoresh Ayin-Sin-Resh. It's all about the number 10. Welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. Today I'm talking about Ayin Sin Resh, a root that means 10. And there's no mystery here. We can draw a straight line between the Shoresh and the number 10 in all of the words that are found in the Tanakh and modern Hebrew. Well, there is some mystery, but it's a little beyond my pay grade. As I'm sure you already know, the middle letter of this shoresh can be pronounced shin or sin. And we know how to pronounce it because of the Masoretes and their amazing Nikud system. But the question is, why did they use one letter for two sounds? I always assumed that the answer was that back when they started writing Hebrew down, the letter Shin represented only one sound, at least in the minds of the Hebrew speakers. And if that is the case, then there's always the possibility that the Shoresh Ayin-Sin-Resh and the Shoresh Ayin-Shin-Resh are related and maybe have deep related meanings. But I've also seen the theory that when Hebrew started getting written down, it already had two separate sounds, sin and shin, and that samech made a different S sound. Early Hebrew writers did not invent an alphabet from scratch that perfectly matched what was going on with their language. Rather, they borrowed the alphabet from a nearby language, and that language happened to have one fewer S-like sound. So rather than invent a new letter to fit their needs, they just used the one existing letter for two sounds. And for this reason, some scholars these days do not recommend trying to find a connection between roots with a shin and roots with a sin. There is a root, Ayin Shin Resh, which is related to wealth and riches. And I've seen and even been involved with discussions on the internet as to whether or not wealth and riches are related to the number 10. And a lot of my dictionaries include all of those meanings, 10 and wealth and riches, in one entry. So I haven't seen all the research, but I will be treating sin and shin as separate letters for my purposes of analyzing the shorashim. And so ayin shin resh will be dealt with in a separate video. Okay, so ayin sin resh. Most of the words from biblical times are the same as those in modern times, with only a few variations in usage or meaning. You may already know that many numbers in Hebrew have a masculine and a feminine form. This applies to all of the numbers between 1 and 19, and then also the ones place in bigger numbers. This is often very confusing to learners for a couple of reasons. First, it's the masculine forms that have an ah sound at the end with a hey. And this is the opposite of what happens in other words. For example, talmid is a male student and talmidah is a female student. I've even seen professors of Hebrew claim that masculine nouns get feminine numbers and vice versa because of these ah sounds at the end of the masculine numbers. But that is just silly. Numbers just follow a different sound pattern. And so the masculine numbers just happen to have ah at the end of all of them. The other thing that throws us learners off is that when we count, we use the feminine numbers. I only know how to count in a handful of numbers, and most of them only have gendered form for the number 1. So in Spanish and French, they use the masculine form when counting. And in German, they use the neuter form. And Greek has gendered forms for 1, 3, and 4, and when they count, they also use the neuter form. So I don't know any other Semitic languages. Maybe this is common across Semitic languages. But in my world, Hebrew is rare in using the feminine forms for counting and also in having so many gendered numbers. All right, moving on. So the feminine form of 10 is eser, eser. And remember, we're going to put the stress on that second to last syllable because of these segels. The masculine form is asara, asara. No segels here, so the stress is on the last syllable. When we're talking about dates, in the Tanakh, there's kind of two ways depending on whether it's the 10th or one of the teens. So when it's the 10th of the month, they have a word asor, and that seems to almost always refer to the 10th day. So we'll see something be'asor lechodesh, whatever chodesh it is. And that means on the 10th day of the month. So that's a special word. So it's not the cardinal number, asara, and it's not the ordinal number, asiri. And so it's a special number that specifically refers to days. And the other method that is employed is when it's one of the teen numbers, and that is anywhere from 11 to 19. In those instances, they use strictly the masculine cardinal number. So if it's the 11th of the month, they're going to say ha'achat asar le whatever month it is. If it's the 15th, they're going to say b'chamisha asar le whatever month. So in modern Hebrew, though, we almost always use the masculine cardinal number for dates. So if we're talking about the 10th of February, we would say ha'asara befebruar. If we're saying something is on the 15th of March, we would say it's b'chamisha asar b'merz. And so we almost always use just the regular cardinal numbers in the masculine form for dates. So I have heard people and even my teachers occasionally say that we should be using the ordinal number, but that can get a little bit confusing because, especially if it's the 1st through the 6th, because then it might potentially get confused with the day of the week, because the days of the week are all first day, second day, third day. So do you mean third day, which is Tuesday, or do you mean the 3rd of the month? And so I think that's why it has become very, very common to just use the masculine cardinal number for dates of the month. And why the masculine number instead of the feminine number? Because Yom is masculine, of course. I did see about 3 instances in the Tanakh where the feminine form is aser instead of eser. Because this doesn't exist in modern Hebrew, and because I don't know all of the rules for stress in biblical Hebrew, I don't know where the stress is. I don't know if it's aser or aser. For the T numbers, and actually starting with number 11, Hebrew has special forms of 10 that correspond with the English teen. And these forms are esre for the feminine and asar for the masculine. So you never see these forms on their own. There's always a number between 1 and 9 just before them. So for the feminine forms, some of the ones place numbers have a reduced vowel. And specifically, I'm talking about 2, 3, 7, and 9. When we say 12, we say shtemesre. And then for 13, we say shloshesre. That first vowel in shalosh becomes a shva. And then for 17, it's shva esre. And for 19, it's cha esre. And for the masculine, only 12 has a reduced sound for the number 2. We say shnemasar and not shnayumasar. But all of the rest of the masculine teen numbers are just the ones place number and then the word asar. And this word aseret can be a little bit difficult for us to get our heads around. It's apparently a construct form, which is a little bit odd because construct forms are usually nouns. But the numbers 3 through 10 have this construct form that generally means the and then whatever number and then the noun. So this one would be the 10 things, whatever the things are. And so the first thing to know is that this is only for masculine. You, if you're trying to say the 10 girls, you would just use the regular eser. So in modern times, aseret is always followed by a definite noun phrase. So usually right after aseret, you'll see the prefix ha and then some plural masculine noun. So if I say asara sfarim, that means 10 books. But if I say aseret hasfarim, that means the 10 books. And of course, if we have a compound noun or some other kind of smichut on top of the aseret, then the hey might show up elsewhere. But that's a story for another video. Another use for aseret is with the word alafim, which means thousands. So if you want to say 10,000, then you use this form aseret and you say aseret alafim. And there are many instances of this phrase in the Tanakh. And of course, we use it in modern Hebrew as well. And probably the most well-known use of aseret is with the phrase aseret hadvarim, meaning the 10 commandments. It literally means the 10 words. And this is how I see it the 3 times that I found it in my Tanakh. But in modern times, it's aseret hadibrot. So I don't know how or why or when this changed, but there it is. And I want to note that in the Tanakh, not every time that I see aseret is it involved in a phrase that's translated as the 10 something. For example, in Jeremiah 42:7, we have Vayahi miketz aseret yamim, Vayahi dvar Hashem el Yirmiyahu. And the JPS translates this as after 10 days, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. So after 10 days, not after the 10 days. So you can see that even though we have aseret, it's not the 10 days. But in modern Hebrew, aseret always means the 10 of whatever, or 10,000. I also wanted to point out something right here. When I use my searchable corpus, I copy and paste the results so that I can work with them. And then if I want to make a graphic, I will often copy and paste into my nice little background. And so this symbol right here is how they write the name of the Lord in the corpus. And I believe they do this so that if somebody prints it out and then throws away the printout, the name of the Lord is not destroyed. And I talk a little bit about this in my extra info video titled Why I Say and Write Elohim. So if you're interested, you can go see that. And this phrase, aseret monim, comes up twice in the Tanakh, looking like 10 times or possibly the 10 times. These phrases are found in Genesis, and both times Jacob is complaining about Laban changing their deal for Jacob to work for Laban in exchange for one of his daughters. And it looks like Jacob says that Laban has changed his wages 10 times. But my JPS translates it as time and again. So he's changed it many times, but not specifically 10 times. Okay, we also have esrim and asarot, 2 words that look like eser with different plural endings. Esrim has the masculine plural ending, and that actually just means 20. And asarot, with the feminine plural ending, means tens. So in the Tanakh, it's often used with thousands, hundreds, and tens. And these are used exactly the same in the Tanakh as in modern Hebrew, although these days asarot is always spelled with a vav before the taf. So these next two words are the masculine and feminine forms of the ordinal number, tenth. And the feminine version can also be used as the fraction, 1/10. And these meanings are all valid and attested in biblical Hebrew and in modern Hebrew. But this last word, Assyria, I saw it only once in the Tanakh, and it was translated as a 10th part. So, like 1/10, the fraction. In modern Hebrew, I've never seen it in the wild, but the Academia translates it as a decuplet, meaning a group of 10. So, this is a totally different meaning from the meaning it had in the Tanakh. And so these next words are related to tithing. We have the noun ma'aser, and sometimes it's pronounced ma'asar, and the plural is ma'asrim. And this means tithe, the 1/10 of someone's income that they give to the priests or to your religious organization. And isaron often gets translated in the Tanakh as 1/10, but it is always used with regards to tithes. And in the Tanakh, it's often reduplicated, but with the exact same meaning. So you'll see isaron, isaron, and it's not a tenth of a tenth, which would be 1/100th. It's just 1/10. And there are two verbs in the Tanakh related to tithing. The PL verb is le'aser, which means to give 1/10 of your income to the priests. And then there's also a pa'al verb, la'asor, which means to take 1/10. And the pa'al verb I only found it twice, and they were both very close to each other in 1 Samuel. And he's rebuking the people for wanting a king, saying that whatever king they choose will take 1/10 of their flocks and such. And that verb, to take 1/10, is that verb, asor. So that second verb, that pa'al verb, does not exist in modern Hebrew. And maybe that's because there's no one to take 1/10 of our stuff. Many Jews still tithe by giving 1/10 of their income to their synagogue or to charity or to a religious school. But there's no official person to literally be taking their money. The last word I want to talk about is asor. And we talked about this before when we were talking about dates, how in the Tanakh, they used this special word asor if they were specifically talking about the 10th day of the month. Also in the Tanakh, it also meant some sort of a 10-stringed instrument like a harp. And so they specifically referred to that one as asor. But both of these usages do not exist in modern Hebrew, but the word does exist. The word asor in modern Hebrew means decade. So you can say lifnei asor, like a decade ago, or ba'asor haba, the next decade. So really different usage, but the same word. So that's it for today. These are all the words related to the root Ayin-Sin-Resh, meaning 10. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments and I will do my best to respond. If you want to see more about some of the words from this Shoresh, check out my TikTok channel, Hebrew Help with Sapir. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot bapa'am ha'pa'a. See you next time.